if these types of activities that happened are Buddhist, then like, I think we all need to know that, because I think in hindsight, to me, the more I understand them, the more I talk to other people that have had similar things happen in Buddhism, I think they are hard to hear because they're actually just me describing incidences of sexual assault.
A year ago, we brought you an exclusive interview with a woman who says she was raped and impregnated by a Buddhist teacher in a remote retreat center in Veneta. That story generated a lot of reaction from people in our community, most of whom knew nothing about this organization that has been operating in Lane County for nearly 2 decades. A Eugene family watched that story and reached out to their son and daughter-in-law who had studied at the Buddhist Center. That's when, for the first time, their daughter-in-law told her husband and those close to her just what she says happened to her in her nearly 10 years under that Buddhist guru's watch. She spoke with me about her experience. Here's her story. Last summer, Rikkianne Chatfield and her husband Josh watched our story about Rachel Montgomery.
It makes me feel sadness, and so much. It's sadness and a feeling of, I wish I could have been there for her during such a hard time.
Rachel says the leader of the Dzogchen Buddhist Retreat Center in Veneta groomed her and raped her. She is suing the center and those associated with it for enabling the abuse.
It wasn't until Rachel's bravery that, like, for me, that was such a turning point.
Watching Rachel's story changed Rikkianne's life.
That led to me having a cascade of like questions and doubts that I didn't allow myself to have before.
And conversations that she never had before, like the one with her husband Josh, when she told him she had also been raped by Khenpo Choga.
It was just clear to me that to support her and be there for her, something horrible has happened to her.
She told him how, like Rachel, Khenpo Choga scheduled private teachings with her. She told him how one night he had sex with her and continued to do that over and over and over.
What happened more times? Approximately how many?
Well, over the course of many years, like over 100 times.
And how, according to a pending legal case, on another night when they were traveling, Choga entered Rikkianne's bedroom and raped her.
I didn't realize how coercive it was, even though I was experiencing that coercion and that force. It's like an invisible force, because I was being told, if now that we are doing this, you can never not do this with me, and you have to stay close with me or you can never be in this community again.
According to the lawsuit, the sexual abuse evolved into verbal and physical abuse.
He punched you?
Yeah.
Multiple times?
Yes.
Had you ever seen him hit somebody else?
Yes.
He uses that too, right? Physical abuse?
Yes.
Rikkianne says the abuse endured.
I remember thinking to myself, this is a test of my devotion. This is a test of my dedication to my practice. And in a way, that type of thinking actually led me to endure more abuse, because I didn't want to give up my practice. I loved my practice and the teachings very dearly.
So she stayed at the Dzogchen Retreat Center for years under the so-called teachings of Khenpo Choga.
The amount of mental gymnastics that the students have to do in order to justify his behavior it's really something that you can't put into words unless you experience it for yourself.
Rikkianne says she may never have been able to break free from Choga and that invisible force if not for an unexpected development, the COVID-19 pandemic. Choga was stuck out of the country and Rikkianne was able to spend time with Josh, just the two of them.
It really garnered this opportunity for me to start to regain my autonomy, make my own decisions with how I wanted to spend my time, where I wanted to be, and I remembered how amazing it was to spend time with my husband again, and just that freedom of not having to ask if we could go out for dinner was life-changing. And that's when I started to really conceptualize there are so many red flags to what I've been experiencing, And it's not normal to be told you can't spend time with your husband. It's not normal to be treated the way that we were being treated. And there's no reason to ever justify that kind of abuse.
So Rikkianne pulled away from the community she'd spent nearly a decade with.
For a long time, that was my home. That was my community. And that was the work I cared the most about.
There was like a rickety, 3-level staircase.
And then in 2023, Josh saw our story about Rachel.
What haunts me is the visual and the sound of him walking up those stairs.
In that interview, Rachel talked about Rikkianne.
I don't know what she knows, but I never told her because I was really worried about her falling to hell. Khenpo said in particular, if I told my best friend, that he was really worried that she could even commit suicide.
At that time, the two former best friends hadn't spoken in years, but Josh showed that story to Rikkianne.
When Rachel came forward, I couldn't argue that there had been harm done. For me, that was the crack in the dam. Rachel's bravery is truly the reason why I am here today.
Not only did Rachel coming forward help Rikkianne come forward, but Rikkianne believes Rachel speaking out against the center is the reason Khenpo Choga abused her.
He didn't sexually assault me until after Rachel had left and spoke out because he wanted to have a tighter grip on me. He knew we were very close friends. He knew we were best friends. And that was a very strong intention on his part, was to coerce me into the same situation.
Like Rachel, Rikkianne was pushed away by most of the high-ranking members at the center.
Many people don't understand the extent of his harm because he hides it, and many of his close students hide it because they're always trying to justify it as, teachings or specific, personalized instructions.
Like Rachel, it took time for Rikkianne to process the assaults.
At the time, I did not see it as rape. I did not see it as abuse. It wasn't until many years later, and after I was able to gain some distance from the teacher and the community, where I was in a safe environment.
And like Rachel, she's still dealing with the pain, the confusion, the mental gymnastics. Legally, a lot has changed as well. Rikkianne filed a criminal report with the Lane County Sheriff's Office and joined the ongoing lawsuit as a co-plaintiff with Rachel. That process is still in the discovery phase. I caught up with Rachel via Zoom to get her reaction to Rikkianne coming forward.
So at first it was a lot of shock and honestly a tremendous amount of pain. It was really like a bomb, an emotional bomb of pain for understanding that someone I had thought of was really safe and wasn't someone who would experience harm in the way I experienced harm. To learn that obviously wasn't true at all was really shocking.
Rachel told me she feels regret for not coming forward sooner, but hopes they're on the right track now.
It feels really great to know that, maybe I started pushing the snowball down the hill, but the one of the first things that came to mind when Rikkianne came forward is I felt like I had been building a sentence that she put an exclamation point on.
And as for the state of the Dzogchen Buddhist Retreat Center in Veneta,
I've started to wonder if there's the possibility that everyone, and this is a little strange, but even the people I'm suing will all become like Rikkianne in the sense that they will wake up from the nightmare that they don't know they're living in.
there are 8 defendants in the legal case, the civil lawsuit, accused of facilitating the alleged abuse. 5 have denied Rachel and Rikkianne's claims. The other 3 have not yet filed legal answers. Meanwhile, Khenpo Choga was removed as a defendant in that civil lawsuit because he was believed to be out of the country. And when lawyers attempted to serve him notice of the lawsuit, he says he didn't get it, and so they were forced to drop him from the lawsuit. As for the criminal report filed by Rikkianne, in spite of the LCSO deputy identifying probable cause for arrest, the Lane County District Attorney said it is not bringing charges against Choga because there's insufficient evidence to prove that Rikkianne did not consent. Here's what the DA said about not filing charges. The DA said the state cannot prove whether there was consent and, quote, the biggest factor is the culture surrounding this religious group. There seems to be a clear coercive aspect to it. To disobey your teacher would be the biggest crime you can commit and would send you to hell. and the sexual activity in this case is couched in religious ceremony. But the legal concept of consent does not really recognize this kind of coercion. Under the circumstances in this case, it is not legally clear that Chatfield denied consent, end quote. Khenpo Choga currently faces no criminal charges or civil claims. He, along with the high-ranking members of the center, continue to decline our requests for interviews. But Rikkianne says she's spoken to some who have privately expressed their support for the two women. We will continue to follow this story and the status of the legal case. If you'd like to watch our story we produced last year with Rachel, scan that QR code to view it on our YouTube page. It's also on our website, kval.com.